We have been speaking with Anukriti about her application strategy, and now in case you have missed that video, the link should be in the description box. And on this video, what we can do is that we can speak with Anukriti about her interview experiences at INSEAD. So INSEAD basically does 2 interviews with alums. So Anukriti, if you can just quickly tell us about your first interview, who conducted it, how lengthy was it? You don't need to take names. You can just give a general background of the interviewer and just a broad overview of how it went.
Sure. So right after I received an interview invite, I got the names of the 2 interviewers or 2 alums who were going to interview me. And the process that INSEAD has is you need to reach out to the alums. They provide you with their name and email addresses, and you just need to reach out to them and schedule a good time where you can go for the interview. So my first interview was with this alum who was from the finance industry. He had his own investment company, and he was a 2004. He's a 2004 INSEAD graduate. So yeah, very senior. And the thing that kind of at first I found a bit off the track was he was not from my industry. He's from a proper investment banking, financial services industry, and mine was retail. I come from a retail background. So there's a general perception, or sometimes that's what I read on forums, is that usually INSEAD tries to club you with interviewers who belong to the same industry, but I don't think that's true. So anyway, that was how I scheduled the interview, and my first interview went for 2 hours. It was very conversational, and the alum made me very comfortable. At first, I was a bit nervous because it was, one of those life-changing sort of moments. But he made me very comfortable. We started by introducing ourselves, and so for me as a person, I always find it a bit difficult to give a good introduction about myself and my career. And I would like to thank you, Akshat, for helping me frame my introduction part for an interview. So thanks a lot. That really worked for me. I went in. I mean, I didn't really prepare anything for the interview apart from the some of the audio questions that you had shared with me before, which were very helpful in terms of practicing. Before an interview, all you need to do is they're not testing your knowledge there. They're just testing your interpersonal skills, majorly your communication skills. So it's always good to kind of like practice 4-5 questions or 6-7 questions in front of the mirror, random questions, and that should you're good after post that. Right. So my interview, basically after our introduction, he was interested in knowing my role currently, what I do as a retail consultant, the type of clients I work for, the type of budgets that I overlook, and all that. So basically, it was mostly centered around my job. And then he tried to understand how fit I will be. How INSEAD will help me in my career vision, towards my goals. So, and that is something where my story, the consistent story, and the consistent goals essay that he had written played its part, and he was really impressed with the fact that I was decided on what I wanted to do post INSEAD. And yeah, that was it was, apart from this, it was more like he was talking about his experiences and why he did what he did, etc. One thing that worked in my favor was I try to keep my interviews engaged. So let's say if they're reminiscing about their INSEAD days, I would pose a very pertinent question around their student life or challenge that they face or anything of that sort, to kind of like build on that conversation. So they should know that you are also interested in their stories, right? They are not only there for the purpose of being interviewed. So yeah, so that was my first interview experience.
All right. So I'll just quickly summarize what you said. So one is that your interview was not matched as per your background. So he was from a finance-based industry altogether, and you are from a retail/consulting background, right? So that's one. The second thing is that your interview lasted for around 2 hours, which is like quite a lot of time, right? So everything must have been covered in that. So that's true. Third is that you very eloquently put that interview is not about throwing more content. It's more about displaying your interpersonal skills and taking an interest in what the other person is saying. So at times when they used to reminisce, you used to sort of show interest in what they had to say. So
Yeah.
being genuinely
Yeah,
interested in
exactly.
other person's story
Yeah.
really helps. Cool.
Yeah. One thing like the candidate should know is that it's INSEAD interview is not an interview. It's a conversation. It's a discussion between an alum and a prospective student.
Okay.
And you should go in with full interest in, and also you should know about the school as well. Like for example, one of the question that he posed was something related to electives. So I had kind of read the basically just go through over INSEAD's website on academics and clubs, and yeah, that's enough. And also know about your job, what exactly is it that you do, and be very precise when you put that forward. Yeah.
Okay.
So these are the two key things that you should prepare.
All right. So just one quick point to add here. So which I'm breaking from outside. So the thing is that with INSEAD, you'll be matched with an interviewer in the country that you're staying, and the way the interviews are conducted might differ from region to region and country to country and city to city. Okay. So at many a times it's very conversational, many a times it's very structured, many a times it's completely unstructured. So be prepared for anything.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
So that's
I did hear before while I was prepping for my interviews, I did hear from you and others that sometimes it's more like it's some interviews tend to take kind of like a stress interview. So I was also prepared for that. The way I prepared for it was, and again, thanks again for helping me prepare for such events, Akshat, is that just throw random questions at yourself if you're practicing alone. Just throw any random question and see how you react and how well you come up with a coherent answer. So yeah, that's enough for practice.
Okay, cool. Wonderful tips. So let's deep dive into the interview that happened, the first interview. So I mean, obviously it was a 2-hour interview. So it must have been very extensive. So what are the major areas that were covered? So one area that you have already pointed out is that they tested out why INSEAD and some electives that you have researched about INSEAD, etc. So any other major topics, for example, career goals or behavioral questions?
Yeah. So when he walked in, he had my application stories, essays in his hand, as well as so he had my application in his hand. And a good thing that I did was I had taken 2 copies of my CV that I submitted to INSEAD before, and a copy of my application. So it came in handy because he wanted to see my CV and make notes on top of it. So yeah, be prepared. Just take your CV and your application with you, a copy of it. Right. So he started going through my CV and he wanted to understand, my career trajectory. Luckily for me, I've been in the same industry for past 5 years, so I had kind of like a very coherent trajectory. So I explained to him basically what I did after my undergraduation, and then why I decided to go for an MBA. I had a very valid reason to support why I did my first MBA, which was basically to get into consulting. And I told him about India and the regional dynamics that play when you want to get into consulting within India. So yeah, I just explained my reasons for first MBA. Then I walked him through my current career and my career in London so far and all that. One key thing that he wanted to understand was the role. So since I'm in consulting, and many aspirants who go to INSEAD are from consulting background. Not generalizing, but yeah, whoever is from a consulting background. My interview wanted to check that how exactly will I be doing something different after INSEAD when it comes to consulting. For that also I was prepared. I told him the limitations of my current role. I told him how I'm not able to operate on a more strategy level, how I'm not able to kind of advise my customers right from the beginning, but rather I come in the middle or when they are planning to implement a strategy. And this is something I'll kind of look forward to once. INSEAD will equip me with the knowledge to kind of start at the beginning of the consulting cycle for any customer, any client. So yeah, so that was one thing you should be prepared to answer. that how exactly you're going to do something different after INSEAD.
Okay.
And then he also kind of tried to test out my ethics at one point of time. Basically, he posed a question, something related to. So I've done some charity work while I was in India, and he kind of posed some ethical questions around it. So, for example, it was more around if I would take a bribery in order to run the charity organization, and there's no other way around. So, what I'll do in that case. So
Okay.
yeah, so you have to stand true to your principles.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll quickly summarize what you said. So one is that your interviewer had read your application. Generally, the interviews at INSEAD are blind, which means that the interviewer only has access to your resume. But in your case, you emailed the interviewer your entire application. So that's the reason why he sort of went through the details of your application. It might or might not be a good idea to do that, and just in case people are watching this and try to emulate that strategy. So that's one. Second thing is that your interviewer was very interested in seeing how an MBA will be useful in your case, because you come from consulting and you want to switch to a different role altogether. But in case you say that, hey, I am from consulting and post an MBA, I want to stay in consulting, then you need to explain what the difference between your current and your post MBA consulting role would be, and how would an MBA be useful in that regard. Okay, wonderful. So now speaking about any behavioral questions, for example, did they ask you about leadership questions, or did they ask you about time when you failed, or any experience-based questions?
No, not in the first. No. In my first interview, I wasn't asked any such question. But I was asked about a consulting engagement which I had done for a very big, apparel brand in Italy. So I was asked how exactly. Basically, I was questioned around my recommendations to my client as well versus implications of my recommendations and all that. So yeah, basically he kind of like tried to understand how I go about a consulting engagement.
Okay, wonderful. So
but these questions can be asked, so yeah, be prepared. Have one example in your head for time when you failed, and these are very like what do you call off the rack questions that you should be prepared with.
Absolutely. So it's always beneficial to know at least 3-4 stories that you are going to go with, and you can then use these stories as per the question being asked.
One important point is whatever examples that you've written in your application, be thorough with that and present the same in the interview, because INSEAD essays cover most aspects of your life, be it leadership example, be it failure story, be it winning story. So just be thorough with that, and
Okay, all right. Now, in terms of any oddball questions or any surprises that happened, so one is you pointed out that there was an ethics-based question that they asked. Anything else that was asked?
Okay, so the one oddball question that I faced was he asked something related to his industry, which is finances. So he wanted to understand how we go about defining the bottom line increases for a customer depending on, and the KPIs that we track to gauge a program's success. It was very the question itself was very financial in nature because he wanted to understand a few things which if I used any financial modeling or any other So but I was very honest. I told him that no, I did not do that financial analysis for my clients, but I am interested, and this is something I look at to go and equip myself while at INSEAD. So kind of like played it in my favor.
Got it. So basically it was a technical question on finance, which you did not know much about. So you just simply acknowledged the fact that you do not know about it. So that's,
I was very honest, because I told him that, I'm not, I do not do such consulting in my current role, but I would like to. And this is where INSEAD comes into play. And one thing to note is he was not testing me, not at all. Just trying to understand more about me.
Got it. Okay, wonderful. So, okay, Anukriti. So at this stage, what we can do is that we can speak about your second interview at INSEAD. And for starters, if you can just quickly cover the basics, what it was like, what were the overall impressions? Was it similar to your first one, or what were the major differences?
Sure. So my second interview was with a lady who was a 2009 graduate. 2009, graduate from INSEAD, and she was an American living in London for the past couple of years, and so she came from digital marketing background. Yeah, but she initially, so what I did was when I received her name, I did a quick LinkedIn search and I found out that she had started her career in banking. She was in Singapore for a few years, but then she moved to digital marketing, and yeah, so I kind of had that her background in mind. I mean, it helps. It helps sometimes because you can frame certain questions beforehand itself. Right. So again, the second interview was very breezy. I mean, she was really amazing in the way that she made me feel so comfortable, and she kind of spoke a lot about very specific details about her experience at INSEAD, which gave me a very good idea about the school, about the culture, and about what it takes. She also gave me good idea about the kind of placements that happen post INSEAD. So yeah, so she was so she basically was telling me more about her experience, and I again was, of course, I was genuinely interested in getting to know about her experience as a student. So I kind of asked questions around academics, around exchange programs and all that. So yeah, that was good. I think she had my application, she also had my resume, and she was basically testing my aptitude in terms of my characteristic or my nature, and whether it will fit INSEAD. So one key thing to note is at INSEAD, the students are basically very driven, very ambitious, but not specifically towards a certain field. Like if you can be ambitious in your career, but you can also be ambitious towards any other cause. So all you need to do is you need to show that you are driven and you have passion about something in life. So, and that is something I kind of gauged from her initial conversation. And I knew that, okay, she wants me to kind of give her a picture of how exactly a student I will be, what kind of a student I will be at INSEAD. And then I basically told her about my past, about how I was in school, in college, and yeah, about my work experience and all. So yeah, so it was more about me kind of deciphering what she was looking for, and it was very unstructured. Very unstructured interview.
Okay, so just a quick note there that since these admission interviews are conducted by alums, the issue that happens is that many a times these alums are not experienced in conducting these interviews, so the process gets a little bit unstructured. But at the end of the day, the INSEAD Adcom makes these interviewers fill out a form, a feedback form about the interviewee. So even if it looks that your interview is a bit unstructured, be rest assured that the alum would put his thoughts on paper in a structured format.
Okay? Yeah, and I think there is some sort of like a track that the first and the second interviewers follow. So the first interview would kind of look at your role or your career fitment and your future goals, and the second interview would look at your interpersonal fit. So that is what my second interview was all about.
Okay. All right, wonderful. So getting into the details of it. So when you say that your second interview tested out your interpersonal fit with INSEAD, what kind of questions were specifically asked to you?
So that's the beauty about my second interview. No questions were asked. It was all like one conversation led to another. I told her, so she basically, how we got to this part of the interview was, she asked me what was it I was looking out of INSEAD, and I was very honest with her. I told her, first of all, my key aims is to reposition my career in Europe and get on an accelerated career trajectory. That was my first two key points. The third point was that I honestly told her that I feel a bit stagnated in my current environment, and I want to get into an environment where I'm highly driven and I'm surrounded by turbocharged people who are passionate about causes, and that kind of will help me get an international exposure and develop a global perspective about things, and in fact develop new interests, and that is what I'm looking for in life. That resonated well with her, because even in her career, she went to INSEAD at a time when she felt she was stagnated and she wanted something to charge her up, and she wanted a different experience and develop herself
Okay.
personally. So that was good. That was good because it resonated with her. So yeah, this is how we kind of like came to this part of the interview, and then yeah, she asked me about my a bit about my extracurricular activities. Like I'd mentioned that I'd worked for a charity organization in which I'm still actively involved, and so I spoke about it. I gave some of the details, some of the specifics of my work in that organization, and yeah, so yeah, that was how it went.
Okay, so basically it was a conversation-driven interview, your second
Yeah.
interview, and
Yes.
there were no
And
standard questions that were being asked to you.
there were no standard questions, and I kind of I was able to take the driving seat in this interview because
Okay.
I was able to, I would say, swerve the interview in the direction I wanted, which was to talk about why I want to do INSEAD, and yeah, how it's going to help me, and also how it's going to help my consulting career. So yeah, it was like just ask relevant questions.
Okay, so cool. So Anukriti, any last tips that you would like to give to people who are considering applying to INSEAD? What could you advise them that would allow them to be at the place that you currently are?
Okay, so first and foremost, aim for, if you're an Indian, again, I would reiterate, aim for a GMAT score above 710 or at and above 710, because definitely the Indian diaspora, the Indian pool is very competitive. Even in my current batch, and I've already started talking to people, I know so many Indians who come with a score of 750, 760. So just, yeah, that will, a score above 710 will set you up. And then basically after that, it's all about your essays. Now in your essays, be lucid and concise, and just present your story, present a consistent story. Basically your story is kind of like just look at it as a sort of like a your caricature, and it should point at something. And when I say your story, it encompasses your job description, it also encompasses your personal essays, so this should all point towards some direction. So yeah, just think of what you want to achieve after INSEAD. Read a lot about INSEAD, about student life, about your career gains, and then decide. So that is the tip around application strategy. I know INSEAD has the most comprehensive application. There were like 6 essays, and more than 6 essays actually. And once again, I would like to thank you, Akshat, for helping me navigate through those answers and basically helping me out, really. Being very patient with me. I was a very nervous candidate. I was really nervous. But yeah, so that is about your application. And interviews are very breezy usually. Just know yourself, just know what you want after INSEAD, and just know what your current, just be able, you should be able to give a good introduction and explain properly what your current job. And yeah, that's about it. And know more about like INSEAD's course and curriculum, because you should know about the school that you're going to. So that's my tip.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Anukriti, for sharing your experience. We wish you the best, and it has been a pleasure speaking with you. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Akshay.